Good evening, everyone. My name is Liz Duff, and I'm head of the law school here at Westminster University. And I'm here this evening really and primarily to welcome you to the university and to wish you a very successful evening this evening. This is obviously a very important area that you're considering for reform, and you're going to have an update this evening. And we're delighted to be of some assistance by providing you with the opportunity to meet here. And I'm looking forward to hearing what happens as a result of the meeting this evening. But may I wish you a successful event and wish you a very, very fruitful outcome in terms of the discussions that go on this evening. And I would like to hand you over to Susan. Thank you.
Much indeed, and I want to start by saying thank you for your generosity in providing this excellent venue. It's a great hall, and it's really kind of you to have made it available to us tonight. Thank you. I might take you up on that. I'm just going to start by saying a few words to set the context of the overall HMCTS reform programme. I'm going to try not to go on too long, and although this may feel slightly frustrating, I'm going to skip very rapidly over the bits of my presentation that deal most with family, because that is then going to be covered in much more detail by my colleagues over there. So please don't be too frustrated when the bit comes up that you're most interested in and I go past it very fast. That is because it's coming, not because I'm ignoring it. We have an extraordinary justice system in which we all work and about which we all care. And we know that there are many things about it that remain the best in the world. I sometimes get criticised for saying this, but I really believe that it's true. I think many of the things that are most fundamental about our justice system remain exceptionally strong. But there are a set of other things about it that feel as though they are not expressing that strength as well as they could. And that need improving, maintaining and enhancing if we're going to retain not just our international reputation, which after all is something we strive after only because of what it reflects about the service that we genuinely deliver to people here, but to continue to do what we all know really matters and to give people access to a really good quality, fair justice system which protects them in all that they do in their lives. And that is the beginning of the HMCTS reform programme. We need to change in order to make sure we remain world class. Say a couple of things about the system that we're reforming. It is a large and complex system. Reform covers every part of HMCTS's work across criminal, civil and family courts and tribunals. And there are a set of things about the system which we think could be better. It often feels forbidding and hard to navigate to people. It feels as though it has high barriers to entry, that we don't have simple ways of dealing with simple things, and that at times processes feel designed around experts rather than users, which itself damages access. We know that we're not as efficient as we could be. It sometimes feels illegitimate to talk about efficiency in criminal justice or indeed in the wider justice system. But I don't think it is. I think we actually have a duty to try to make the system work as efficiently as possible and to put all of the resource that we have to put into the system to the best possible use. And I think many people will agree that the system that we run at the moment feels overstretched and as though it's showing signs of strain. We've got buildings that don't always look fit for purpose, and the fact that we are asking dedicated and committed staff who care about what they do and do it well in almost all cases to work harder and harder leaves us with the risk that we appear to disregard the time and trouble of others in trying to make the system work. And those are things that I think we need to address through reform. I occasionally show this slide to just as a very visible symbol of what the system we're reforming currently looks like. This is in a civil court rather than a family court. We do run the civil system very largely on paper still. We have systems for managing the paper, but I still have a lot of people who are employed to push piles of paper around the back of courts, to organise them, to put things into folders, and to try to make sure the right folder ends up in roughly the right place at the right time. This is, believe it or not, actually a filing system. You can't quite see it on this version of the slides, but you may be able to see that there are some pieces of paper hanging from the blinds at the back of those windows, and they are alphabetized pieces of paper which somebody is using to sort the archive on those tables at the back. Admittedly, this is not typical. In most of my courts, I have a bit more structured storage space in which this is translated into one of those nice rolly things that you used to get in libraries. You know what I mean. But it is still, to me, really remarkable that we don't lose more things more often, given that this is how we're operating the system at present. We have a set of principles that we've set out that underpin the way we want to make the changes we want to make. And the critical ones here, I'm not going to read them out because I'm going to assume that you're all proficient readers. The most important ones are about, I know it sounds a bit naff, but putting people at the heart of what we're doing, really making sure that before we make change, we talk to the people who are going to use the system and we understand how they want it to work, how it could be different, that we think from first principles about what the thing is that we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, and how you might do it in a different and better way. The other one that I always end up talking to is this one about designing for 2050 rather than 2018, and I always have to say that I am not under the illusion that I can predict the world in 2050. If we genuinely tried to design a system now for 2050, the one thing we could say about it with great certainty would be that it would be wrong. But we do know that we live in a world which is going to continue to change. And one of the challenges that we face in the system at the moment is that where we do have legacy computer systems, they tend to have been designed and then pickled at the point at which they were designed, which means that when things change, it's difficult to adapt and move them on. And so when we say designing for 2050, not 2018, we simply mean designing for future change, planning in the ability to continue to evolve and iterate the systems that we have. We also talk about being proportionate and segmented and about increasing accessibility. And I'll talk a bit more in the context of some of the pieces of work we've done about what we mean by that. I'm also going to just talk a little bit about what actually reform is. So we have two large chunks of reform. We run a crime programme, which is supported by what is known as the Common Platform, which will bring together the CPS and HMCTS and the police on one platform. Now, this all sounds very tech-driven, but it's really about being able to share and having visibility across the system of what is happening and the ability to look from end to end, which allows us to do some really important things in terms of making sure that all of the bits of the system can see when something's not happening and act on it sooner. And then we're running a civil, family and tribunals programme which operates as a single programme and looks across civil, family and tribunals, not because we think they're the same, but because we think there are pieces that we can build for one jurisdiction which we can then use and adopt for another, which allows us to do more things more rapidly. And that's important in the slides I'm about to go through to answer the question, why might you care about what we're doing other than specifically in the family jurisdiction? And the answer is because there may be things we're doing in other jurisdictions which later become applicable. We're also making a whole set of underpinning changes that support new ways of working. And I'll talk a bit more about some of those later. And finally, we have a piece of work that is focused on data and management information, which again sounds very dry, but is about making sure that we have really good information on the back of which we can improve the way we work. And that really matters. One of the biggest challenges we've got at the moment is that our management information for running the system is limited to what we can get people to collect through a whole range of not very well connected bits of legacy system, or we can literally get people to manually sit and, people make tally charts and then send the data back. And that makes it really difficult to do a whole set of really good things that you would normally expect to do, like being able to use your data to work out where in the process things are going wrong, pinpoint it and put your resource to it to fix it. So it's a bit dry, but getting that bit right will give us the ability to make a lot more change on things that really matter, like how quickly we're able to answer questions that are put to us, making sure emails get answered and so on, where at the moment I don't have much visibility about how well that works now because it's all very deep in a whole lot of individual systems. I'm just going to whiz through some of the things that we've done in each jurisdiction, starting with civil. We've introduced a system that allows people to make I'm sorry, I don't know why the fonts have gone peculiar on these slides. It's not trendy, it's just wrong. But hopefully you can still read it. We have introduced a system that allows people to make civil money claims online and to defend them, or at least to issue initial defence online. And we've got very good user feedback. User satisfaction is at 90% for this service. We launched it to the public in April, and there are a set of things that we are learning from this which we think will be more widely applicable, including a set of things about how we help people structure what they're putting into the system. So you can see here we've got a timeline of events. This may not seem extraordinarily revolutionary, but it has really helped litigants to organise what they are trying to say to the court. And we also ask people to list out why they're claiming the amount of money they're claiming with a little sort of, again, very simple sort of table. And again, it's not rocket science, but it really helps with people structuring what they're trying to get across. And we're already finding that judges are saying that what's coming through to them is more intelligible because of the way we've asked people to try and structure things up front. We're also able simply to do things faster. So, as it says here, paper claims take on average 15 days from receipt to issue. The digital applications are just issued instantly when they're put on the system. And that removes a layer of handling and activity at our end, but it also just means that people get results more quickly through the system, which is a good thing. There are a set of things that we are now building to extend this out, to look at part admission, and this will effectively build out in chunks that will allow us not just to look at the first stage, but to take the process all the way through court and beyond, which will make a real difference to that pile of paper that I showed you at the beginning, and will allow us to start operating civil courts in a way that allows us to be much more fleet and flexible. I'm going to, as I said, I'm actually just going to go straight through the family slides, because otherwise I risk giving you a very headline level view of something you're going to get much more detailed view of in a minute. But again, there are things from family where we're not just learning about how to do really good tools that help us manage family cases in a different way, but we will also apply across other parts of the system. In tribunals, we have started by focusing on social security and child support. We actually talked to users about what they wanted us to change first, and they said that although they would quite like to be able to make applications online, what they wanted more than anything else was to be able to track their applications and to know what was happening. And indeed, we know that we get an awful lot of phone calls from people that are simply about where they're up to in the process. Have you had my documents? Has DWP done their bit? When's my hearing going to be? And so the first thing we built was this thing with the ticks on, which is called Track Your Appeal, which allows people to track what's happening with their appeal online. Again, it's not enormously complicated, but it is what people said they wanted. And we can also give people alerts by email, and really critically for this group of people, by text message. So there are really not very many people now who don't have an SMS-enabled phone and, you know, quite a good ability to use text. And so if you can communicate by text, you can reach a very large number of people. And that has proved really positive. We've now built out the part that allows people to apply online. That is also going well. Our user satisfaction for this is lower than for some of our other services at 76%, and a lot of what we find when we drill down into the people who are not so satisfied, so that the remainder are not all dissatisfied, some of them are just neutral, but when we ask them what they're not satisfied with, they typically are asking us for a bit of the service that we're planning to build but haven't built yet. So there's quite a good bit of information for us in there that helps us work out what to build next, so that we're responding to the things people most want. This bit that says in development on it is the next thing that we're doing jointly with the, and on all of these we work very closely with the judiciary and the jurisdiction, but with the judiciary we are developing a piece that allows a tribunal panel who want a small amount more information from an appellant before they feel like, so we make some social security decisions on the papers, stop me if you know all this, in some cases, the panel will feel that with the answer to a couple more questions, they could make a more rapid decision. And this allows judges to formulate and send the appellant questions, and it allows the appellant to answer the questions either by typing or, we think, again, really quite importantly for this group of users, by recording audio or video and sending it to the tribunal, which allows more rapid decision making if there's only a small number of matters at issue. That is an extremely early test, and we don't know how widespread we think it will be, but the judiciary are really positive about what's happened on that so far, and that's another thing that we think might have some wider use. I think actually probably less in family than potentially in some bits of the civil jurisdiction, but it is another example of something where we will develop it and then we will test whether there are other places where it might be sensible to use it. I'm going to speak very briefly about crime because I think the applicability is not so wide. I genuinely get feedback telling me that people are delighted by the ability to make a plea to a criminal offence online, which I still find slightly perplexing, but that is all genuine, and the overall feedback is also really positive. And again, we also have a set of things now in use. So the automated track case management, the single worst named reform project of all time, which is essentially a thing that allows us to do single justice service cases more efficiently without putting lots of cases from Transport for London in a taxi every week and taking them to Lavender Hill Magistrates Court, which we genuinely used to do, effectively allows us to make good decisions with a magistrate and a legal advisor sitting together, but to result them on a single system of record rather than having a process of having to have them typed up separately in a back office, which is not just not efficient, but risks introducing error if you don't do it extremely carefully and check it extremely thoroughly. And this is the beginnings of the common platform that I described earlier on, which brings the police, the CPS and us onto a single system now in operation in Liverpool, which also now has the facility for the defence to be able to access initial details of the prosecution case as soon as the CPS have created the IDPC documentation. And that is, again, feels quite different from what we've done before and has some lessons in it which we are going to learn as we start thinking about how we make more systems available to practitioners. There are a set of cross-cutting things that we're doing, all of which I'm happy to answer questions on later if that's helpful. We want to do more of our back office administration in larger courts and tribunal service centres so that we can work more efficiently and get things done more consistently. At the moment, we have this is not quite true, but it's nearly true that we have about 350 very, very small admin teams working in each individual court, which work relatively separately. And that introduces lots of variation in practice and quite a lot of inefficiency. And putting that together will allow us to work much more effectively and to do things that, again, matter to people, like actually answering the phone. Video hearings, we are testing for some very particular types of hearing. We have done a test in the tax tribunal, which was popular with those who took part in it, relatively small scale, still very early days. We are also doing some testing on virtual remand hearings in Medway, and we think that if we can get the infrastructure right, there may well be some cases where using a video hearing for a preliminary or progress hearing may be better than asking everybody to turn up to court. We also have a piece of work on scheduling and listing, which is usually of interest, which is about not just trying to make sure we've got, again, there's a bit of it that's about underpinning with better technology, but it's also about looking at the end-to-end process. What do we do to schedule and list? How do we make sure we've got people's information? How do we balance some of the availability? Listing remains a judicial function and will remain a judicial function, so that is very much something that we're doing in partnership with senior judges, but we think we can give some better underpinning information to make that a better process. And that is one area where what I said earlier about our underpinning data and management information is really important. One of the things that we struggle to do at the moment is to collect really good information about, I've talked about us collecting better information about how much other people's time we're wasting. So we're quite good at recording how well we use our buildings and our judges, but we're not so good at recording how often we leave people waiting for a long time because we're trying to stack people up in order to use the building efficiently. And I think we could be striking better balances on some of those things if we caught that information more effectively. We are also planning work on how professional users will be able to interact with the system. Again, I know this all feels a bit systems focused, but we have a thing that is at present not very beautifully called the professional user interface. Don't do the acronym, it's really bad. Which will allow people to register, to log on, to move things between people and to submit cases. We're using various versions of this. So it says we'll make it more widely publicly available during the course of next year. We've got various things we're doing which you'll see later, including as part of the work on financial remedy and divorce, where we're looking at how we can make it easier to interact with us as an organisation. And again, some of this is about being able to get much more readily real-time information about what's happening on a case that you're working on. So rather than having to ring up and say what's happened, has he had it, has a decision been made, to be able to see more of that passively just by going into the system. We are really serious about making sure that we evaluate what we've done. We're working with the MOJ on a programme-wide evaluation plan. We have set up a series of data fellowships in partnership with research and other funders to bring more capacity and understanding into HMCTS about how we can make more of the data that I've talked about available outside HMCTS. And we are trying to do more and more to improve our communications and engagement. So on your chair, you have a thing called the Reform Update, which tries to set out where we're up to so far with the reform programme and what we'll be doing next. And we will produce those regularly to reassure you about the health of the nation's trees. We don't actually print them in huge numbers, although when we have physical events, we try to bring a small number of physical copies, but it's principally an online document. And we also have a series of webinars and events, of which this is obviously one. And really importantly, we also try to make sure that it's possible to get signed up to email alerts for the particular bits of reform you're interested in hearing about, so that not everybody has to hear about everything all the time. And even more importantly, we spend a lot of our time trying to make sure that we are getting users' views and asking them about what we're doing. And some of those are in principle interviews about what they'd like to see, and some of them are very practical. Look, here's a thing, what do you think of the thing? Would it be easier to work if you changed it around? Can you understand this question? Does it allow you to answer it? And we also do that through the process of building things and testing them with people. And that is a really important part of what we're trying to do and the way that we're trying to work. We really want to stay in touch and hear about what you think. In a minute, I'm going to stop talking so you can hear about the bit you really want to hear about. But please do feel free to get in touch about anything at any point. We have, as I said, got various kind of bits of outward communication, but we've also got the Change Something That Matters email address, which you will always get a response if you email. I've got a Twitter account, which many of you may have seen, I don't know, gets quite widely used, mainly to tell me where people want more catering and what they latest had confiscated by security. But again, we do use all of that and try and make sure that we're responding, and when people flag things, we will go and chase them down. And we've also got the blog and a set of things on the website, including some quite well differentiated sections for different parts of the reform programme. So again, you can get the information that's of most interest to you. I'm now going to hand over to Adam and colleagues, who are going to take you through a little bit more of what we're doing, particularly on family, and give you some demonstrations of where we're up to. Adam. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for giving up your evenings or part of your evenings to be here tonight to listen to us talk about what's going on in the family reform. I'm Adam Lennon. I've got the title of Service Owner for Family, which essentially means I'm responsible for all of the family-specific projects that we're doing at the moment in reform, and making sure they all align to the overall vision that we've got for the future of HMCTS. So that covers lots of the topics we're going to talk about tonight, divorce, financial remedy and public law, and then in the future areas like private law and maintenance enforcement. So I just want to spend some time giving a brief introduction, but again I won't take too long because I think the things you really want to see are the demonstrations of what's coming next. I'll try and be brief as well. But I think it's safe to say over the last 6 months have been really, really busy for family justice. We've done an awful lot, and I think more important than that, we've made a real difference to an awful lot of people that have been using our services. So I've been involved in family justice from a court's perspective for about 15 years, and I think we've done more in the last 6 months, and we've got more planned for the next 6 months than has been achieved over all of that period there. I really think we're making such a difference to the people who actually use the service. And whenever things have been difficult, because believe it or not, things don't always go to plan, I just remind myself of that and say we actually are making a difference to people who are using these services. We're not doing this just for saving money or for anything like that. It's actually making a difference to people who are using this service, and people like it. So using divorce as an example, we now know that over 63% of people who are doing this themselves are using our online channel to do this. So since we launched in May, that's 17,000 plus digital divorce applications that have been submitted. So that's a real change for people, but that's, I think the big thing there is that actually less than 1% of those petitions have got anything wrong with them. So you compare that back to 40% on paper, less than 1% have got an issue with them. And actually most of those things that have got an issue with are things that we know about and we're planning to build out in the future. So there's not really many errors coming through. And some of you may have known in the past, I've said we spend an awful lot of time actually checking those petitions on paper, seeing what's wrong with them and having to send them back to people. So that's thousands of hours of staff time which is spent doing that rather than answering the telephone or actually doing the work that is needed to be done. So that's really making a big difference. So if that carries on, which it will do, that time is going to be a thing of the past. And there's a flip on for that. Obviously, the people who are getting these things back are already in quite a stressful situation. They don't want forms coming back to them saying you've missed X, Y, Z from certain sections of the form. So it's really making a difference to those people. The reason that we're getting that is basically we're asking the right questions in the right way. So we are framing questions that people actually understand, and we're then validating those answers wherever we can. So the system weeds out lots of the answers where they're not going to be right. And you know, it's worked even beyond our expectations, to be honest, that actually asking people things in a way they understand, believe it or not, they answer it in a way that you want them to, rather than asking them something in Latin or something similar, which has the effect that they don't know what you're asking them and they get it wrong. Probate is doing exactly the same as that. So they launched a little bit later than divorce, but they're doing exactly the same approach as divorce has done, and that's reduced the rejection rate by almost half compared to what it was on paper. And the people using that are going up each week. Currently it's 24% of applicants. That's on a trajectory that's increasing, and we aim for that to be the same as divorce. I think when I talk about probate and divorce sort of maybe gets more of the headlines because obviously more people are aware of divorce. But probate as a project, the feedback we get from that actually means more to me than perhaps some of the divorce ones, because there is a different demographic of people that use probate that are generally on average an older demographic, and they are really embracing this way of doing things digitally. So one of the feedbacks we had in the past was this lady had to take a day off work. She had to travel using public transport into a city location. She had to go and swear an oath in front of the office, and found the whole thing really stressful and basically didn't enjoy it at all at a very stressful time in her life anyway. She's recently done an online one for another relative, and she said it was so much better than what she did before. It was much less stressful, and she felt really proud of the fact that she'd been able to do that, and thought the person she was doing it for would have been proud that she's done it online. So it was just really good to get that sort of feedback and remind ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. Now, those two things are in what we call public beta, so that means anyone can use that. We've got both versions of that are available for solicitors, but it's in a pilot at the moment. So you might ask me why have we got it in a pilot and we've got this great system for people in person. And I think Susan touched upon that earlier. We are developing something that's common, that's going to be used across civil, family and tribunals for professional users that will allow us to go public. And that is taking a little bit more time because it's cutting across all those different jurisdictions and needs to fit all the different needs of those users. But we are busy doing these pilots and getting all the feedback, so the actual specific information for divorce or for probate is going to be right by the time that we're able to layer on top this user interface for professionals. Having said that, we decided to start with legal professionals for the financial remedy consent order pilot. This, again, is something which I'm really proud of. I don't need to highlight, I don't think I will need to highlight to people who use the current system that there are perhaps some delays in terms of getting consent orders approved, and it's taken longer than you would like. And that's one of the driving factors about what we're doing. So it was just the other week we had one application that was submitted to us digitally in the pilot, and that took 3 hours from it leaving the solicitor's office to it being back with them saying it's approved. And if you think about that in some context, that would still literally be in your post room being enveloped up to be posted out to us. I'm not saying all of them are going to be done that quickly because there's still a judge at the end of this that has to approve them, but on average they're taking about a week to be approved, the ones we've had through the system. The numbers are relatively small because we are in a pilot, but we are increasing those numbers each week, and we're getting the feedback to make the system better on an ongoing basis, really. It's getting better and better all the time. And one of the things I particularly like about this project is it's really testing that national model that Susan mentioned about being in Courts and Tribunal Centre. So we are using the South West Divorce Centre, the administration to administer these cases. The solicitors that we've recruited so far are mainly from London and the South East, and the judges that we are using are national. So we're not constrained geographically by the resources that we've got in a particular location, which is some of the problems we have now in terms of the delays that we've got. So now we've got judges logging in from all over the country, from wherever they may be, to consider these cases, and we've got the admin staff being able to handle these digitally for a national set of solicitors. So I think that supports the model that's going forward for the Courts and Tribunals Centre. So, finally, I'll just talk briefly about the shared storage solution that we've launched in Swansea DFJ area. So that local authority is currently using it. And this is a system where essentially it gets the documents to us securely via a portal, and so there's no more having to email it into an address, that email being rejected because of its size, or it then being sent around to various different people, slowing the whole system down, and it doesn't get to the people it needs to get to. This is one place where the local authority submits their bundle and their documents for their hearings, and the judge and the administration can get in there and get that. This is just the start of a pilot. We're going to add more courts and we're going to add more local authorities, but Emma in a moment will be talking more about actually all the other things that we're doing to add on to that and make that a better system. I should say before I finish, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. I think people that are joining us online can submit questions via Slido, and you don't have to do that in this room. We'll give you the opportunity to ask questions, so don't worry about that. So really, without me taking any more time, I'll hand over to Isabel Syred. She is the lead for divorce and financial remedy, and she'll give you some of the demonstrations of what you've really come to see.
for rolling out the divorce, online divorce, and also for financial remedy for consent orders and contested. So I work with the judges, the legal advisors, the court staff and the users who are at the heart of what we're developing. So looking at how we develop the product to try and take away some of the pain points that users currently have with the current paper system. So I'm going to demonstrate to you the online product for divorce first of all. But just before I do that, I'll just run you through what's coming up over the next 6 to 12 months. So we're currently in public beta with the divorce online. So we've got the citizen-facing product, and we started in public beta last May, and we are in public beta at 4 regional divorce units. So that's in the South West, Southampton, East Midlands in Nottingham, West Midlands in Stoke, and also the North West in Liverpool. So in January, we'll be rolling out the acknowledgement of service online and also the decree NISI. And that will be to a reduced user group. So we'll be testing that product over those few months and then be launching that into public beta, hopefully in April/May next year. We will also be developing the outcome of decree NISI. So that's where we give the ability for a user to download their orders. So their entitlement order, the decree NISI and the decree absolute. And then in the second quarter of next year, we will be looking at more of the edge cases. We're looking at the ability to make a general application in a divorce, so applying for, say, bailiff service deemed or dispensed, and also nullity, judicial separation, and civil partnership. So that's what's coming over the next 12 months for online divorce, and that's with citizens. We've also got a private beta that's operating at East Midlands Divorce Unit in Nottingham, and that's where solicitors can apply for their divorce using the new interface. We will be looking to develop the next stages, the acknowledgement of service, decree NISI, over the coming quarters. And what I'm going to show you now, before I move on to financial remedy, is a demo of the actual product. Okay, I hope this works. Just bear with me a moment. Let me just check that. Great, that worked. So I'm not going to show you the actual divorce application online. What I'm going to show you is the next part, which is the acknowledgement of service and the decree NISI, which is going to come in January. This is a prototype, so it's not the real thing. It is just a dummy prototype. So what I'm going to show you now is when the petitioner files a divorce application online, they pay online, they upload their marriage certificate, then we issue it. We do an admin check and we issue it. Then the respondent will get a letter, and this is an example of the letter that they'll get with a copy of the divorce petition, and they'll get the opportunity to respond online. So they will go to gov.uk and enter divorce, respond, and then enter their credentials. So they'll get a reference number and access codes. They'll also get other useful information around getting help, but they'll have 7 days to respond, which is currently what they have now. And then the user will have this progress bar, so that helps the user to orient himself as to where he is in the process. So he's at this point where your husband applies, and they're asked to read the divorce application, which is known, and then to compile their response, which is known as the acknowledgement of service. And they must respond within 7 days. So they've entered all their credentials in, they've had a confirmation email to check their email address, and then they can continue. So then they get played back the application for divorce. So you'll notice here that it's got details of who the petitioner is, the case number, and we've got these little help buttons here which give the user information about what all this means, in particular around the jurisdiction, which is quite a complex area of work, and it explains what jurisdiction means. So they're getting all these useful guidance notes that they don't currently get in the paper system. And then they can, once they've read the divorce application, they confirm that they've read it, and then they can respond, they can carry on and respond. So how do you want to respond? So they can either let the divorce proceed, or they can let the divorce proceed but they don't admit to what my wife has said about me, or they disagree and they wish to defend it. So we do have help notes in there, an explanation if they do click on defended of how much it will cost them and what to do next. But we're going to go with I will let the divorce proceed. So the respondent then answers a series of questions, which again you can see we've tried to make them into plain English to make it easier for the user to understand, and you can see the little help buttons as well. So they're played back around jurisdiction, and I'm going to confirm that I agree that the court has jurisdiction. And then there's a question around other legal proceedings outside of England and Wales. And I'm going to click yes here. And then what I would have then is an option to put in those details. So details of any other cases or any other names of those involved. So we continue. And then they get played back the costs that the petitioner may have asked for. And then they get an option around, do they agree to pay the costs, or they suggest they pay half, or I do not want to pay any of the costs. So they do get that information played back. So they continue. And then they confirm that they're happy to receive emails throughout their case. So they provide their consent that they're happy for that to happen, and then the option of putting a phone number on. They then get a standard check your answers screen where they've got the chance then to go back and change any of the data that's been submitted. And they'll also have a statement of truth on the acknowledgement of service to confirm that they are who they say they are, and a warning around if they're not, that they could be fined or imprisoned. There's detail again about what these statements mean and what they are. So hopefully they've submitted that, and then they'll go back to the progress bar, and it'll show them where they are in the journey, and then a detail of actually what to do next. Okay, so we're then at the next stage where we've got the application for decreeing ISI. So the petitioner will get this notification. They'll say your husband has responded to your application and said they don't intend to defend it, so you can now apply for your decreeing ISI. So they then sign into their account, and then they see a progress bar, and they're at this point here where they're looking to get their decreeing ISI. So they continue, and they'll read the husband's response. So they'll get played back that acknowledgement of service so they can read what the respondent said in their answers. Again, you'll see they've got the help buttons there on what all this means. They again continue, and then they make their application for decreeing ISI. So they apply for their decreeing ISI. They review their divorce application, so they've got an opportunity here to review their divorce application. So it's played back to them as it's done previously. And if they want to change anything, they can change things like contact details or their email address or so on, but they can't change the main substance of the divorce application, otherwise it would incur an amendment fee. So they'll continue through that, and this is a behaviour case. This is why we asked, is your behaviour still continuing? If they say no, they're asked for when did the most recent incident behaviour take place, or the closest date, and then they'll be then asked about their living arrangements. We're going to say yes on this one, And then they'll go straight to the claim costs. So they'll play back what the husband said about the costs, and then they'll be asked to continue. They're then asked if they want to share any other documents with the court. This is probably useful maybe on a 2 years by consent where they may want to upload a copy of the respondent's letter confirming consent, or a confession if it's an adultery claim. But we'll continue, and then you've got to check your answer screen again, and so they can go back and obviously change any of the information. And then there's a statement of truth. So all what you're seeing here really is this will all be supported by a new practice direction. So currently in public beta we have a practice direction 36E. So whatever letter we're on by that point, we'll have a new one to support this. So that removal of wet signatures, and identifying the respondent is who they say they are. So then now we go back to the progress bar, and the court will then check their application. They'll refer it to the legal advisor, and then that's where the legal advisor hopefully will approve the application, and it'll get listed for a decree nisi. Again, we'll send an email notification to the petitioner to download a copy of the entitlement order, and then they'll then move on to the decree nisi. So your decree nisi for a divorce was made on the 8th of August. So again, they'll get that notification through, and they'll then have an opportunity to log into their account and download the decree nisi order. They'll also get instructions on what the next steps are. So you then need to wait 6 weeks before you apply for your decree absolute. So they'll get a notification to sign into their account and make an application for decree absolute. And they'll get asked the question, do you want to finalise your divorce? We've not finished these screens properly yet, but we're still doing a little bit more research on that. But broadly, this is how we want it to work. Do you want to finalise your divorce? Yes, I do. And then they'll submit it. So with all of what you're seeing now, we've done loads of research all around the country, not only with citizens, with members of court staff, legal advisors, judges and so on. Also at the accessibility centres as well, to make sure that the product does pass on those people who have accessibility needs. Okay, so that's divorce online. We now turn to financial remedy. So financial remedy, we've started a pilot, as Adam said, in Southampton, and we've had around over 50 applications for consent orders, so it's going really well. We are looking to have the end-to-end journey for consent orders in place in Q1 next year. And then we're going to turn to contested applications. So we'll be looking at next year to have the first release for the contested, which will involve the first hearing. And then the second part of the contested will be the second and third hearing. Again, we're starting off with solicitors, so we're looking at the product from that end initially, and then we'll be moving on to the citizen side of things as well. So an online product for the citizen as well as the solicitors. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is play you a video of how it's currently working in Southampton. So just bear with me a sec while I get the video. I think I'm doing this right. Hold on a minute. So I'll just play that now.
Welcome to the Financial Remedy Consent Order Pilot Demo. The Divorce Reform team have created a product which allows professional court users to make a consented financial remedy application online. The system we've created is what's referred to as a minimum viable product, and they look different to what will eventually be made available publicly. The system is currently being tested with a small number of solicitor firms, and over the coming months we'll be working closely with these firms to improve and enhance the service based on the feedback they provide. Additional features that are being developed by other services within the reform programme will also be added when available to provide further improvements. During this short video, we'll be walking you through the solicitor journey from logging into the service, completing a digital version of Form A, uploading a draft consent order, the 81 statement in support, and finally paying and submitting the consent order application to the court. To kick off, we'll begin by looking into the financial remedy service. All firms that are participating in the pilot have been issued with a link to this login page and an individual username and password. Once logged in, users will be directed to the home page where they'll be able to view and manage all of the applications that they've submitted via the pilot system. This is known as the case list. From this screen, users can move easily between divorce cases and financial remedy cases. The case list can also be filtered to show applications that have reached different stages in the process, or the search function can be used to locate specific cases using criteria such as the party names or the solicitor reference number. To submit a new application, users start by pressing the Create New Case button. From here, users will be able to specify the type of financial remedy application they want to submit, although the current service is restricted to applications made by consent. Once in the application, the solicitor is asked to give their name and contact details. Various functionalities such as a postcode lookup have been used to speed up this process. However, we hope to automate this step in the future to save users time. For the purposes of the pilot, we are asking users to provide an email address and to confirm that they're happy to communicate with the court digitally, allowing further communication with court orders sent by email, which reduces postal time and cost. The financial remedy consent order pilot can be used regardless of whether the divorce petition has been issued via the paper service or online. To ensure that the financial remedy application is connected to the correct divorce case, users are asked to provide the divorce case number and a copy of the decree nisi or the decree absolute. The current delay experienced by users while the original file is located, and it's hoped that this information can be automatically populated in the future for cases where the divorce petition has also been submitted online. The user will then be asked to enter the name of the applicant, and subsequently the name of the respondent, and the respondent's contact details, or the contact details of their representative. All party details will be stored on the case record. The user is then asked to complete the relevant sections of Form A. By separating out the party details and removing any questions that are not relevant to consent order applications within divorce proceedings, the current 13-page paper Form A is condensed into 2 to 4 simple steps. Step 1 asks the user to state the nature of the application that is being made. Step 2 asks for property and mortgagee details and only applies to applications that include application for a property investment order in relation to land. Going forward, this question will be hidden if a property adjustment order is not being applied for. Step 3 from Form A is only applicable where an application is being made for periodical payments or secured periodical payments for children, and can be skipped if irrelevant. solicitor to digitally sign the application by confirming that they are authorised by the applicant to complete it, removing the need for a wet signature on a paper Form A. The user is then able to upload a signed copy of the draft consent order, and a copy of the D81 statement in support. If the application includes an application for a pension order, the user can upload any relevant pension forms or documentation. They are then given the opportunity to upload any other relevant documents, such as a notice of acting or a cover letter. Payment can be made by providing an online help with fees reference number, or by providing a firm's payment by account number. Payment is currently being processed by court staff, however it's hoped that the step can soon be automated to reduce delay. A reference number can be given at this stage to ensure the user can easily identify the payment on their payment by account statement. Finally, the user gets the opportunity to check the answers they've provided and can go back to correct any errors. Once the user is happy that the details they provided is correct, they can submit the application to the court. Once the application has been submitted, the user is taken to the case screen where they can see with the green bar at the top that the case has been created. From this screen, the user can see a copy of all of the information that's been submitted as part of the application. The history screen gives the user access to real-time information as to what is happening with their application. From this screen, users will be able to see when the application has been issued, when it's been referred to a judge, when an order has been made, and whether the application has been approved. Copies of orders will be uploaded to the system and visible to the user from the Application Documents tab. Going forward, we're looking to add email notifications to the system to update users at important stages of the process and to add the ability for users to submit responses to orders via the online system. In the current pilot, an interim digital system has been developed to allow cases to be reviewed by the judiciary digitally. This is a temporary measure that has been put in place to allow us to test the financial remedy, solicitor and admin journey prior to a reformed interface being made available for the judges. I hope you've enjoyed this short video. We want to thank all of the solicitors and members of the judiciary who are taking part in the pilot or have assisted the project team with our research. Your input has been and will continue to be invaluable and key to ensuring that the project we are designing delivers an improved, streamlined journey for our customers.
Okay, thank you for your time. Hopefully you found the demonstrations useful and can see that how we're developing the products both on divorce and financial remedy. And we've got a busy 12 months ahead with delivering more functionality and features. Okay, thank you. I'll hand over to Emma now on public law. Just close that down.
Good evening, I'm Emma Petty, I'm the Service Manager for Public Law and Adoption. As my colleagues have said, as part of the project we've undertaken extensive research, and the research that we've undertaken has validated our vision for the project. So it was really clear to us, after speaking and communicating with our users, that the public law outline that's in place is good. Thank you. So it's really clear to us that the public law outline that's in place is good, but it's the tools and systems around it that could do with improvement. And so actually, as part of our project, we want to bring efficiencies so that those that are involved in public law cases and adoption cases see the right information at the right time. And by doing this and adding new technology, we intend to provide a seamless end-to-end service for our public law and adoption users. So the research also shaped our aims because actually, as we spoke to more and more of our users, we realised that the current paper application, it is repetitive, it's lengthy. So actually, to provide an online application provides a simpler process, it's intuitive, and also it ensures the gatekeeper receives the information they need to allocate and timetable the case in a speedy way. It was also really evident that the way in which we treat urgent applications, so most of you will be aware that over 40% of our applications are urgent. And when we spoke to users about the current practice, even though it's not prescribed in our public law outline, there's this natural practice where if it's urgent, it will be listed within 48 hours. But quite often we would find that the child was safe in hospital until day 5, and actually the hearing wasn't required until day 5. But they ticked urgent hearing, and a hearing would be given within 48 hours. Well, of course, 40% of our applications being heard within 48 hours puts immense pressure on our system, not just for the court, but also the users. So there's some really simple things that we could do in the application that address that urgency issue. And you'll see from our demo later on that just by putting in some simple tick boxes or radio buttons where you can select same day right through to day 12 and then provide the information about what is that event that's important, has allowed the hearing to be allocated at the right time and actually the gatekeeper making the right decisions. Some of the other things that came out of our user research was that actually being in control of your case, so being able to go onto the system and track your case, and also look at what your tasks were, so lifting those direction orders and that standard direction template and making them into task lists and making sure that actually you're complying with those directions and you're showing very visually that things have been completed and actually the case is ready for hearing. So a lot of the aims of our project is to actually give the parties in the case control of their case. And so something that Adam mentioned earlier, which was our starting point for the project, was the shared storage solution. It's a really simple concept, but it's having some big benefits. You'll know that the current bundles are huge, so those that operate paper bundles, whole host of problems, and those that have digital bundles, again, they're so large that trying to email them in one go is difficult. So quite often you'll have them in various emails. So we've created something that we've called the shared storage solution that Swansea are currently using, and it allows the local authority to upload. It can be an application, that's what they're doing at the moment. It could be any supporting documentation, and more importantly, it's the SISI bundle. And then once that's uploaded, the court and the judiciary can view it and then they can download it. So a simple concept, but is being really, really effective, and our feedback to date is really positive. What we're really conscious of is we know that local authorities have already invested in systems to do that. So what we will make sure is that actually, wherever possible, we can ensure that those systems integrate into our system. This slide is just some good feedback that we've had to date. I think Susan touched on this earlier. And then, so we've done shared storage solutions. So the next natural area of focus was the application. Users told us that to have an online application, as I said, would be simpler, faster. So we've designed an online application, and we've worked closely with our policy and legal colleagues, and we've tested in an alpha environment just to see actually what is working, and now we want to take that into a pilot environment to a smaller number of courts to actually see how this is working. Now the demonstration that I'm about to show you takes it actually in fact beyond the application right through to the first the standard directions order, just to give you an idea of the flow of the work. So I just get this up.
A local authority has been advised that a mother is about to give birth to a child who may be at risk of harm. The local authority decides to start the application of a C110A form. The local authority solicitor is away from their desk, but they're told that they need to update information, so they log in from their phone. They can see which application they need to update and apply for a care, supervision or emergency protection order. Now that the child is born, the local authority legal assistant can now log in and enter the child's date of birth. They can see which sections have been completed by their colleagues or themselves. Before submitting their application, they can review the entire form. If they wish to make changes, they can do so, such as to the DX number. They can see how much the application will cost to send, and when they do so, they're given a reference number. With the application sent, the gatekeeper at the local court is notified. They log in to see their applications, and they can see which ones are urgent. They can also see which applications are in the process of being completed but have not yet been sent. They can review the entire application form, and at the top they are told what are the key flags around the case. Once they've reviewed the form, they can make their allocation, selecting the level of judge and entering their allocation reasons. They can also view judges' calendars and propose hearing dates and hearing times. They can now issue standard directions. They are given a standard set of standard directions, but they can edit as appropriate. Once complete, they will send out the standard directions. All parties are informed that there has been an application. All parties are notified if they've got directions that apply to them. They can log in and see the status of these directions and what work they need to complete.
So yes, that's our demo right through to the standard directions order. Just really to say, like the other services, this is a prototype. We will be continuing to perfect this, iterate, improve. So it will look very different in the future based on user feedback, but it certainly gives you a good flavour of what the project are going to achieve, and I'm conscious that I'm running over my time. So thank you very much, and we'll now open for questions.
So to start with, I'm afraid, Emma, I think this one's for you. I know you just finished talking. But we've had a question in that says they admire your optimism on integrating existing systems with shared storage solution. Is this really realistic, and what are the timescales?
So the reality is we have had conversations with local authorities, and we have had some conversations with those companies that provide the current software. And so we're in conversations, and the element that we're doing, the shared storage solution, is simply an upload function. So all of the elements where it's bundle creation, case management, for the local authorities, that will stay the same, and actually the ability to then use that bundle, so that bundle creation tool, the local authority will still use that, but instead of using a cloud-based solution that they do, they'll use the shared storage solution. And the local authorities that we've spoken to are content with our approach, but we'll continue to communicate as we go further into the project.
Thanks, Emma. So I don't know if anyone wants to got a show of hands, has got a question in the room. There's someone very prompt there. There's a microphone coming your way.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Lizzie Iron from the Personal Support Unit. Thank you very much for this, and it's all definitely going in the right direction. But can you tell us a bit more about the assisted digital services?
Yes, do you want to do that? I don't know if my mic's working, if I need to hold both. But, you always use that. Okay. Yes, so we've got a set of different layers to the assisted digital approach. So the first thing that's worth saying is we don't think digital is going to be right for everyone. So we're not proposing to turn off paper for individual users. And I think it's really important to say that. There will be some people who are, for whatever reason, just going to find it easier to fill in a paper form. And we don't want to stop people filling in a paper form if that's going to be the best way for them to interact with us. We do want to try and make sure that we can scan the paper form and process it internally as if it had come to us digitally, because that makes our lives simpler and more straightforward. And we also want, if people are able to use digital, because of things like the error rate described, some of that is about making the form simpler to understand, but some of it is about the fact that a digital system can tell you when you've got it wrong a bit more readily. So for people who are kind of on the cusp and could use a digital system with the right amount of support, we've got a few different layers. We've got telephone support, so you can phone us up and say, look, I just can't work out this bit of the form, and we've got people who are able to talk you through how to do it. We can do, we will have screen sharing ability as well, so again, you might have had this on other systems you've used, to, if the user gives permission, then the person helping them can see their screen and say, this bit here, that bit there. If that's not enough, we've also got a contract with a company called Good Things Foundation, who are supporting other government departments. At the moment, we've got a relatively small scale contract which we're using as part of our pilot services, but we will expand it over time. And that allows an appointment to be made for a face-to-face support where someone can sit with someone and help them to fill in the form. And as I say, my starting point is that that won't be for everybody. Some people actually will still want to use a paper form, but if you've got somebody who's close to being able to do it, or who wants to have some of the other advantages that come from the digital system, we do want to make that kind of face-to-face assisted digital available.
Thank you. Can I follow up?
You can.
Just as I understand it, Good Things Foundation isn't getting enough business at the moment, no. And is that because this is also good?
Well, obviously, I like to think that. I think there's a few things. So I think it is quite good, and the feedback that comes through. I mean, we do get quite a lot of feedback from people who say, I thought it was going to be a lot more complicated than it turns out to be. We are at about 60% of divorce applications online, less than that for probate, and the take-up figures for SSCS, which is newer and a different group of users, are again low but climbing. And I think there may still be quite a lot of people who are choosing to use paper. And as I say, we're not trying to switch that off, but we do want people to be able to be supported if they need it. I think there may also be some things about how our call handlers are referring to the assisted digital service and how they're picking up the cases where it's appropriate for them to do that. And we're doing a bit of work with the Good Things Foundation and our call handlers to do a bit more training on how they pick up the people who might need assisted digital support. But I mean, in some sense, it's not a bad problem to have, as long as we make sure it really is about people finding the system easy and not about them not getting properly referred.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions in the room? The lady over there, please, Paula. Lady with the glasses in the middle. Thank you.
Hi, it's actually two questions, if that's all right. The first sort of follows on from what that lady was saying. Is there a reason why this interface looks quite a lot like the CGT calculator from HMRC, rather than looking like the online filing service that you have to use for the roles building? Is that on purpose? I'm assuming so. And why?
I'll take that question if that's okay. The services we're developing are all being hosted on gov.uk, so there's a standard design pattern for hosting things on that website, and so we've followed that so that it will look the same as applying for your passport, applying for your tax, so that users, the more and more that use the digital services, it's all familiar to them and it's not something different. The system, the CE file system that you spoke about, is not one of those systems, and therefore that's why it doesn't look similar to those.
Okay. And sort of following on from that, the storage solution, the shared storage solution, is that something that you're going to pull across to financial remedies? Because it would be useful for things like bundles and Section 25 statements, what have you.
Absolutely. So that public law are developing that system and the capability to do that, and we're already using it in tribunals, so they're going to start piloting it there. And again, we're going to use it for financial remedy when we go onto the contested journey. And it'll be used across civil families and tribunals for all the different services that need it. So we're hoping to do things once and do it well and reuse it across other projects. Thank you. You're jumping ahead and taking the question, I understand. Go ahead.
Denise Leicester Law Society Family Law Committee. It occurred to me that with the pilot scheme for consent orders, in particular financial remedy consent orders, and indeed for divorces, drafting the divorce process itself, is there the ability for the member of the public, the party, to take back ownership? I'm just thinking in terms of bundled services, and if the retainer terminates for whatever reason. Thank you.
Isabel, do you want to?
Sorry, could you just explain what you mean by, yeah, for the taking back?
Well, at present, you're rolling out a system where you've got the solicitors who are very generously participating in the pilot. But it occurs to me that just down the line, it's something to think about, that there may be a dispute over fees unfortunately, before the consent order is finalised or at a particular stage of the divorce. So at the moment, it's the solicitors who are actually owning the system in terms of the usage of it and the IT. But it seems to me there needs to be some sort of long stop so that the actual member of the public will have the ability to log in. And I say that, and I also think looking and thinking laterally, you may need that provision as well when you roll out the private family law system and or indeed the public law system, if for any reason, for whatever reason, a retainer terminates. It may not, it may be there's unforeseen circumstances. Thank you.
I know I've asked you to answer. Do you want if I answer that question now? That's one of the reasons why we are in a pilot rather than going public. So we know that's one of the things that we need to happen. And we haven't got the capability to do that yet. So that will come under the professional user interface that Susan mentioned, the ability to either change solicitors to another one or represent yourself. So in the pilot, the numbers are low because one of the things we know is we have to deal with those cases sometimes on a one-to-one basis, and we haven't got the capacity to do that if we've got thousands of them. So we will do things manually for those that need to change at the moment. But yes, it's one of the things that we need, and thank you very much for raising it.
I think it's worth saying we've thought about this quite a bit in crime as well, so particularly where people may have due to solicitor representation early on and then change, and we also see quite a lot of change of representation in crime, and the common platform access for defence allows people, so again we've kind of gone round this loop a few times, and we're relying quite a bit, I think rightly actually, on people's adherence to professional standards. So effectively what we say is, if somebody logs in saying they're someone's representative, we say, hang on a minute, someone's already logged in saying they're this person's representative. Are you saying the representation has changed? Can you guarantee that? So effectively we're relying on a bit of self-policing, so that if people keep popping up representing a large number of people, that gets noticed and flagged and picked up.
That's very much the case.
Yeah.
The changes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've probably got time for another couple of questions. There's a lady at the back there, if you wouldn't mind, Paula.
Sorry, hi, I'm Rose, family law solicitor. When will the divorce applications roll out to the legal service providers? Did I miss that? I'm not sure.
So the plans at the moment are just for the citizens as the priority, and then we'll be looking at solicitors, but there are no plans yet to roll out to legal software providers.
No, I meant like to the solicitors. When will the pilot be available to the solicitors?
So we're looking at we're waiting for the professional user interface, and once we integrate with that, we're looking at that Q1 next year So then we'll open that out to all solicitors. Initially it'll be divorce and then financial remedy.
Okay, and also, just a suggestion, it might help to have a save button, save through the application.
Yes,
Some
is.
people want to,
Yeah.
is there, because we didn't see in the demonstration.
Yeah, because
but
that's a dummy prototype, but in the actual real application there's the ability for the user to save and resume as they go along. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Although it's a lovely system, it's just frustrating for high street firms where we'd be losing work when this system's going to be so good and people will be applying for their own applications.
We're rolling out we're rolling out enhanced features as we go along as well, but we just want to get something out there initially. Certainly for the solicitors side of things, at the moment we can't save and resume, but we will have that for solicitors. But on the citizens, they definitely have that now.
Okay,
Probably
thank you.
worth just adding on as well, although we're not planning to go national, if you like, for solicitors until that time, we are expanding the people that are in the pilot. So if anyone is interested and they want to email into us, if you use the email address that's on here, I'm not saying that we can add everyone on at once, but we will have a list of people that are interested, and we'll add them on as we get the capacity to do so. Just in the interest of time, I think we've probably got one more question we can take. There's a lady here at the front, please, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Amanda Finlay. I'm Chair of Law for Life, which is a public legal education charity. It's absolutely fascinating to see all this, really interesting. I kept on wanting to see the buttons you didn't press, which is more information, because that's actually the critical thing that will help people move through it. A particular point, which picks up on this point about people not always having legal representation, which is when you say, do you need further help, you say, you direct them to finding a legal advisor. Now, not everybody will be able to pay for a legal advisor, so I wondered what you were doing in terms of thinking about referring them to sites such as Citizens Advice and Advice Now, which have materials on them which will help people to understand their problem in a bigger way and can talk about it more informally than you can on an official website. And that's a point that was made by the Justice Working Group I chaired on assisted digital. And it's a point I'll be making at the all-party parliamentary group on PLE on Wednesday. So just to give you advance notice of that. And the other point I'll be making at the APPGE will be the point that was made about the gov.uk look. Because I do think it's a great pity that this wonderful online court is based on gov.uk when the courts, as we know, are independent from the executive. And I do hope that, as our Justice Committee recommended, you will have an independent look and feel so that people genuinely feel it's an independent court that's deciding about it, not some other bit of government. It's particularly important for social security appeals. It's also, I think, important for public law cases.
So just on that...
I
think Isabel,
on the first bit.
Are you eager to answer that first?
Yeah,
I thought I'd sense you were eager.
On the first bit, we do on the notifications, we do signpost people to Citizens Advice and also to any other help organisations. And on gov.uk, we are working with the content people on there to make sure that from our user research that we're doing, that content is up to date and reflects what's on the online systems.
It's not just referring them to Citizens Advice Bureau, it's referring them to the websites that contain information. And of course the Advice Now website has stuff that was commissioned by the Family Justice Council for just this purpose. So it's a pity not to use it.
Okay.
We're really happy to look more at how we can make those links a bit more granular, and I think it's because part of it's not just the sort of headline, go and talk to Citizens Advice, it's about on this topic, here's something, I think there's more we can do there. And I mean, the critical thing there is that we keep on learning which bits people are finding difficult and putting it background through. On the gov.uk point, it's a very good point and it's been made to us. It's something that we are discussing with ministers and the judiciary, and I expect us to end up in the right place on that, because I think that it is right that we need, I mean, there are lots of very good things about the standards that apply to .gov.uk in terms of its accessibility and clarity, and I would want to keep those no matter what. But I think there is something important about people understanding that they're part of an independent process that is, particularly, as you say, for administrative justice, where they may well be involved in a dispute with government, but actually I think across the system more widely as well. So that is something that we're looking at.
Thank you. So I'm acutely aware that we had a fairly short question and answer session. So if anyone has got any questions, burning questions which haven't been answered or asked even, please feel free to use these contact details here to send those questions in, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. But anything else to say, unless Susan wants to close with anything? I think just saying thank you for your time.
No, just thank you very much indeed for coming. I know that evenings are precious, and I'm really grateful to you for giving up time to be here. And as Adam says, if you have other questions, do send them in. If you want to be kept up to date on any of these things, particularly if there are particular projects where you want more detailed information, if you let us know, we can make sure that you get that update. And thank you very much indeed for coming. Okay.
Thank you.